Hello there, and welcome back to our Orlando time-lapse series. You might can hear that I'm a little bit hyped and euphoric because I just watched the latest Frontier Unlocked stream, and guys, it finally happens. They're bringing back the old themes into the game. And they will start with the Western theme much earlier than I expected. I thought maybe in May or June they would release that. So they include this already into the next update, update 3, which is announced to release on the 20th of March. As I'm recording, this is less than a month. It's actually 22 days, I believe. And I mean, this is absolutely great to get so many pieces back. They announced that they will bring back over 300 scenery pieces from the prequel. And I kid you not, when I watched the stream, and I have to give props here to Frontier because they kept it under the hood very well until this point. When I watched the update until the last second they announced it pretty much, I was like, well, okay, it's a nice update, but there is really nothing groundbreaking new. We will get better animations for those water rides and overall improvements on the game, but there isn't really anything new in the department of building. And so when they released that teaser, I was like completely blown out of the window. And that's absolutely great because I would love if they continue to do that so that you have there the element of surprise in those live streams. So since they announced Planet Coaster 2, I had this wish that they will bring back all those themes from the prequel, and to now finally see them doing that with this element of surprise, it's an added bonus. I mean, I talked about that since the third episode, I believe, in the Anaheim series, and from there on pretty much throughout all time-lapsed episodes. So I can't emphasize that enough. The big question that now arises is about which pieces they will bring back. I mean, when we speak about 300 scenery pieces, it's a big chunk of elements there. So I'm pretty sure they will bring back most of those things. They optimized some of them regarding the scaling. I mean, this is something that I completely didn't thought about because all those pieces that I had from the prequel, I always thought of them as in one variation in the standard scale. And so if they now have the added benefit of being scalable, I mean, this completely enters a whole new universe to how I deal with them. And there you can see already that I'm getting maybe back to this one topic I had in a previous episode where I'm pretty unsure if it's now good to continue on the main street, since on the 20th of March we will get so many new pieces. And since most of them are probably out of wood, it would be very beneficial to have them in our building palette. On the other hand, it's only 3 weeks. We most certainly don't make so much progress in those 3 weeks. And after all, we can always go back and try out those new pieces. And that's also something that's quite convenient now with the help that Frontier keeps those content updates pretty much under the carpet until we reach like 3 weeks before they release that I don't have to have this mind struggle. Oh, there's a content update in like 3 or 4 months from now, and therefore I can't continue on building. And that's just great because I can then continue without having this struggle. Retroactively, you could always say it would be great to have that pack already by then. But I mean, what are we talking about here? It's just great that they finally give us not only much more pieces, but also now those old scenery themes that this game urgently needs. So they not only announced now this third update, but also the fourth update in April. And so therefore the main features are that they will add restaurants, and I think functional restaurants that where you can maybe place down benches for your guests to sit on and where you can then serve them some dining. In the prequel it was like you place down like a 4 meter to 4 meter box, and then that's your restaurant, and you can hide that pretty much behind scenery or your building, like I did in the Anaheim. And then you can attach multiple boxes onto this restaurant to increase its capacity. So now when they announce this feature, and I mean it says here on the roadmap, build your own restaurants, I hope that it will go into much more detail then. And maybe even where you have like custom servants that bring the food to your guests. And in context to this project, this would be amazing since we have so many restaurants in the park, especially here on the main street, so many restaurants where you can sit outside, and it would make it much more immersive. When you think back to Anaheim, I had this restaurant in the middle of the main street on the side alley, and I placed pretty much the whole side alley tables there. And since they aren't functional, of course, there's just not that much going on. In the end, this means we have less immersion happening. So it's always great to get much more immersion by adding such feature. So before I continue on that, I would like to quickly note what we are creating within this episode, since I completely forgot about that because I was so hyped about this newest update. So in today's episode we are focusing on the area between the railroad station and the Chamber of Commerce building. In the last episode I talked about that I would like to have this area watertight. With that I just mean that this area has a degree of immersion, and where you not have like the backside of those buildings hollow, and just overall a complete picture of those scenes. And so here we are starting to make that picture more complete by enclosing the Chamber of Commerce building. When you see the facade of the Chamber of Commerce building, you don't really realize at the start how long stretched this building actually is. And the main reason why it's so long stretched, in the area between the railroad station and this Chamber of Commerce building, we have there the entrance to the railroad station for disabled people. And there I come back to one topic I talked also in a previous episode about barrierefreies Bauen, so barrier-free building. And that's just a standard today when you build and plan a building, that you think about those barriers that you make when you have a different elevation level somewhere that you can only access by stairs. You exclude pretty much all disabled people there. And so it's important that you give them the same equal right to go everywhere by providing ramps and elevators within your buildings that you plan. And therefore this filler area that we have here, I have to say that it is beautifully done from the perspective that you don't notice it. And that's just something I like in planning throughout when you try to solve a certain problem. In this case, that you have to provide such a flat ramp that needs a lot of space. And so that's the beauty of it, that you don't only fulfill now the functional element of it, but also see this ramp now as a chance to create a unique appearance that fits within your theming. I think this is a beautiful example here where you can learn a lot from, that you use this requirement in the first place, that you have to provide something there for disabled people, and turn that around as a, not as a barrier, so to say, but actually as something that uplifts the whole experience in your park. So I got carried away again here. I just wanted to quickly note that today we are building this building, and after it the filler area between this building and the railroad station. So as I said, I wanted to get back to the updates. When you take a look on each update that we will have and what we already received, then we have update 2, which was greatly appreciated also by the community, with video billboards, with custom speakers, synchronized coasters, the multi-select improvement, and the sheer list of bug fixing and overall improvement of the game, that you can say with certainty that this update was the most important one so far. But when I see now the third update with the Western theme, well, I think this will be my favorite so far. And as a quick note, on the third update you will also receive a random rotation and scale mode for scenery. And this is especially great for foliage placement. So in this regard, it's similar to Update 2, which also provided a gameplay feature that improves the building side of the game. And together with the content updates of those old themes, I think those are the most important changes for us here in the time-lapse series. They have a direct impact on how we are building things here. And well, then we have the fourth update in April with the restaurants mainly. I get a strange sense here that they will reveal something as well here, very close to release maybe. When you take a look on all the features on paper, there aren't so many as in the previous two updates. So I can very well see here another content pack or maybe something similar to that. But nevertheless, I'm so relieved and happy for them that they finally found their style, how they continue to make content in this game, and it gets appreciated by the community. And I would like to emphasize here that so far it's all for free. They didn't announce yet another DLC or some monetization policy. They all do this for free as a company that needs to make money, and that's quite remarkable, I think, here. They learned from their mistakes they made with the DLC shortly after the first update, and now they gave us a roadmap where we can see the transparency, what they are working on, and what they plan to release in the future. Sure, it would be great that the game at first launch would be in a much better state, but I think we just have to stay realistic here. What makes sense also from their perspective, and so far what we can see is that they have a certain plan in mind how they will fix this game and add features to it in the future. There is dedication and transparency to the community, and if that's there, then the game can only improve in the future. And therefore I wanted to conclude this topic by saying, Frontier, thank you that you are going into the right direction here. They finally understood now the community, I think, and why they were so enraged at the release, and where they can see also the struggle from a player's perspective. And when you see that as a developer, I think you can only improve in the future. If you are honest enough to accept that and to accept the criticism about your game, then you can only improve. And that's currently at least what I think is happening. And who knows, at some point the trust level might be so high again that people start to buy paid content and DLCs again. So at this point, let's get back to the build. We finished now the Chamber of Commerce building and begin now on the ramp within this area. It's quite interesting to follow the path of this ramp on how it performs those maze-like movements up to the railroad station. And at the very top, there is a section within this ramp where you can enter the railroad. Therefore, on the railroad itself, there is a wagon specifically designed for those disabled people that is located directly behind the driver's seat. So when it comes now to the actual gameplay of Planet Coaster 2, there aren't any disabled guests as guests in your park. And also on the railroad itself, there isn't any disabled wagon where you could simulate this. So you could kinda say that the reason why it got built in the first place is not existing anymore. But still, the aesthetic of this area, I think, is very pleasing to the overall visual of the park itself when you look on this entrance area. And therefore, the best reason that I can think of and to make it also function in the end is to just lay some path in there and to make it accessible to all people. As I'm recording right now, I did not yet dig deeper the actual pathing on the railroad station itself, since it's very frustrating, I think, to modify now those paths with this polygon mode, and I'm sure that you can make that, but it will just take much time to really get a clean solution for that. There is of course a great YouTube channel out there, Taggy3D, and this guy is like an absolute genius when it comes down to creating paths in a much more advanced way. So I will link down his channel below my video here. And the thing was, before I watched his videos, I was in the clear impression that you couldn't make any of those paths that are on the railroad station, like the curved staircase in front, those ramps on the side within those atriums, or like the staircase underneath where you go then up to the railroad station. I was in the impression that you couldn't make that. But after watching his videos, I'm right now in the belief that you can do that actually. So at some point I will dedicate much more time and effort into making this pathing work on the railroad station. But I don't think that right now is the perfect time for that. We still have the initial momentum of creating this main street, and I want to keep it like that as long as I can. And also, what would it give us? Sure, you could have then some guests in the park strolling around already, but other than that, there aren't any benefits in terms of the visuals. And so it's far more important right now to continue on the main street than on the actual functional side of those paths. So let's get back to the build a little bit. So always when you have certain areas like this one in a park, you will start to notice that there aren't as many reference images that clearly tell you how this area looks in detail, like for example on the city hall or the railroad station. And therefore I want to credit here somebody that helped me providing reference images about this area and to help me understand it so that I can build it here. And so the one I want to credit here is Jamertamer, and he is one of the very first viewers also, I think, of the Anaheim Park when I streamed back in 2019. And so not only thank you for helping me now in providing some reference images, but especially being one of the first viewers of this content and especially the Anaheim Park, even back to 2019. And therefore I just wanted to say thank you. So right here in this little corner, there is a little staircase hidden, and you can take there a quick shortcut to the upper half of the ramp. So something that you see also in a minute was that I was a little bit concerned about the width of the ramp and the path beside the Chamber of Commerce building right beside it. And therefore you see me then positioning this ramp a little bit more away from the Chamber of Commerce building to have enough space there that you could still walk there. So from here I will do a short music break, and after it we will finish this ramp and then add some foliage. So welcome back. During the break I placed down those path stones that we use for the flooring on the ramp. I think this looks much better than the brickwork that I placed down earlier just as a placeholder. And so you start to see the visual of this area. And I like this materialism here very much, so that you don't have too many different elements there. You have on this ramp, for example, 3 main elements. This is the flooring, then you have those walls, and you have on top the trim with the fence on top of it. And so it's a clean and nice mix, and you have a difference in color there. And this makes the whole thing pop into your eyes much better. You have the contrast there between those gray walls, the white trim on top of it, with the black fence on top of it, and the reddish flooring. And this combination, I think, is very visually pleasing to the eye. I mean, imagine for a second if all of those elements are in one color, then your brain would have much more response time until it figured out how this area will look like. And so you have here this contrast that is helping you in quickly understanding how this area looks like. It's like this, and you already know how it works. And therefore the importance of color is so essential. Later, when we are on the main street itself, we have their facades that rapidly shift from one to another. And the main features that changing with them is of course the color. So when we look on all the tools that we can use as a creator of something like a park within this video game, I mean, let's scale that up even in nature. Using color as your tool to express something is one of the most basic and, I would say, impactful tools that you can have in the end. In a previous episode I talked about not only recreating the park as it is, like visually, but also on the side of how it feels to you as you are strolling by this area. And the biggest and maybe also the easiest way how to achieve that feeling is to use the color. So when I talk about those topics, I always feel that I repeat myself on them, and maybe I do, but I think there's just a truth also in that. I always have this inner contract to you as you are watching that I want to tell you something valuable, and I don't want to just small talk and chit chat here and there, and I want that you learn something after it. I mean, I don't want to be a teacher here or something like that. It's just the way I am when I'm creating that, and it's the think world I'm constantly in. If I imagine of doing it much sloppier than that and in a different approach of only gaining attention or something like that, I would distort the reality in which I built all of Anaheim and also this park right now. I would lie to myself and also to you as you are watching, and that's the worst decision that I could make at the end. I have to show you everything, not only what you will see in the end in the park itself, but also what the park looks like in my head. And therefore I have to tell you all of those things that you get a picture of that. I mean, it's so weird to talk about that, and I can also get that it might sound pathetic and arrogant maybe, but it's kinda like that, and I can't change it. And I shouldn't change it, I think, if it's the truth. So at this point, let's get back to the build. As you are seeing, I'm placing down those fences, and whenever we do that, the piece count is increasing, and still I don't have a definite solution right now on how to deal with that. It's just a struggle, right? On one side the performance, on the other side the accuracy about those fences. As I'm recording, I'm done with this area and also with the entire left side of this main street, and we are roughly at 150,000 pieces at this stage. So I have to be honest that I doesn't really notice any difference when I was at 120,000 pieces. You just can tell if there is a noticeable difference, since I get still around 90 FPS with the highest settings. And if I activate NVIDIA DLSS, I suddenly have 180 FPS. So it's completely non-dependent on the piece count in the end, at least right now. If we now have maybe 300,000 or 400,000 pieces, I could very well imagine that this has a deeper impact on it. But it tells you, of course, very well that this game can handle a lot, and I mean a lot more pieces than the prequel. I mean, it's pretty clear also why, because you don't have this DirectX 11 bottleneck anymore, where previously every item in the game was rendered through the single core speed of the processor, and now you have the multicore doing that. And of course, it's a lot more faster because you have multiple cores there. At least right now I find it just too early to give a concrete opinion about that, because you just don't know. We don't know what happens if you now have 1 million pieces in your park, and therefore we have to try out, right? But with that, of course, comes the question that I received also in my comment section of the last video. And so the user, Fred Online, asked, are you thinking of compromising too much detail in order for people to comfortably play your park when finished? So thank you for this great question. I will try to answer it. And actually it's not that easy to answer it. It's a very complex set of multiple questions that come along with that. But to break it down, it comes down to how detailed I have to get to make something believable within this video game. And to make something believable within the realm of this game, it's not only a question about the game itself, what tools the game provides in order for you to build something within a certain degree of detailism, but maybe even more importantly, it's about subjectiveness of what looks like it's believable, what is believable to me, but also my impression, what would look believable to you when you are seeing this park for the first time, what first impression it makes on you when you see it. And I think this argument outweighs the playability aspect of it. Of course, it's reasonable that the game and the park itself is playable, but why would you play it in the end if the park does not look as near to the real-life thing as it could? And that's the thing. It can look like that. It's just a question of how to achieve it within this game. And also, why would you put so many hours into it, all that effort, but then to save on all those essential details that make the difference at the end? And maybe that's the thing. We want to make a difference here by the sheer impression of it. And this impression, when you first see the park, evokes an emotion within yourself. And every piece we use for that to fulfill this initial impression is a natural consequence of that. So here we have our justification on why we are doing it so detailed in the end. And now to finally answer your question, yes, we are sacrificing the playability of this game constantly when we adding so many details within the game. But as I said, there is a justification for that you evoke an emotion within that. And this emotion, this first impression, is much more important than the playability of the game. Because let's be real here, when you imagine that we are currently at 150,000 pieces in the game, and we aren't even remotely finished with the main street alone, just imagine how many areas there are in the Magic Kingdom. I mean, we will get certainly over 1 million pieces, maybe even 2 million pieces. And since this is so unclear, right now I can't make myself dependent on that. And it's also not wise to do that, because you would always have to question your building decisions. And To an extent you already see it here in this time-lapse series. In almost each episode I talk about that. And so at the end we have again the beauty of unpredictiveness. We just don't know how this series will evolve, and I will talk about that probably so many more times in the future. And I think it's just beautiful in a way, because there is not a definite answer to everything. But still, I would urge to stay positive here, since already this game is a lot more performant than its prequel. If we would have the same amount of pieces in the prequel, we would see very drastically the performance issues arising. At least right now I don't see that here in the sequel, and I also don't think that we will see that in the near future at least. And always have in mind that the longer the series will go, the technological invention and evolution of CPUs and GPUs and of the whole gaming industry evolves over time. And so maybe in 2 or 3 years we will have much better hardware to run this game much more efficiently. And to conclude this topic, no matter the impact of performance issues that arise throughout the series, you will always see a time-lapse here in this video format. And if I would record real-time footage, there are certain ways how you can evade those performance issues visually in those videos. So as you as a viewer of this channel aren't bound to any performance issues, since you are only seeing time lapses and recorded footage, it makes much more sense to prioritize the visual impression that you get when you see this park and what I talked earlier about, than to prioritize the playability at the end. Maybe this gives you now a much more clear opinion of what I'm actually trying to say here. So at this point I would like to conclude today's episode. We just managed to finish now this area between the railroad station and the Chamber of Commerce building. Meanwhile we talked a lot about the newest updates of the game, the Western theme, I'm so hyped about that, and about the general approach on how to deal with detailism within this game. Not only how I deal with that, but also you as you are watching. In the next episode we will finish this entire site, including the 2 courtyards, and then move on to the other side of the main street. So I hope you enjoyed it today. If you did, subscribe, like or comment, join our Discord server, watch my videos about Anaheim or Orlando, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.